Welcome to Conflict Managed. I'm your host, Mary Brown. Conflict Managed is a weekly podcast about toxic work environments and how to fix them. We're glad you're here. Good morning, Pam, and welcome to Conflict Managed.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to talk with you about soul health and what all that entails to have engaged in healthy work environments. But before we get to what you are involved with today, we'd like to hear more about you. So, can you tell us about the first job you ever had as a young person?
I think it was working at a fast food place. Very typical.
Yes.
And, you talk about learning the ropes quickly is in a fast food place. So that was just for a summer in high school. And, I think then everything is a little stressful, but, you just interact with the customers and, provide them their food. And in hindsight, it wasn't that stressful compared to what was ahead, right? But that was my first job, was in a fast food place.
Well, yes, fast food places can be very stressful, right? The demand,
Yeah.
especially when you are just starting out. But
Yes.
isn't it nice that we can kind of build to, I mean, workplaces, just the nature of the work, let alone the environment, the political environment of what's going on, can be very stressful. So it is nice that we can hopefully gradually build up to be able to have the capacity to deal with whatever it is around us.
Yes, and I tell all the younger people that I meet, those in high school or college, really take the opportunities with, the jobs that come by, because there's always a learning experience in that. And you want to get in the game, if you will. And I use that term, get in the game, and then you can see what you like, what you don't like, whether you're interacting with your, colleagues or interacting with the customers, you're going to be learning something like interpersonal skills, which I think are so important, especially in today's environment. And the only way to really get good at it is practicing.
That is so true.
Yeah.
And no job or any experience needs to be wasted. In
No.
fact, it's a waste to not see what can I learn here. So,
Yes.
yes, we have jobs because we need income, so
Yes.
on and so forth. And that is one aspect. But if we think about, I think about professionalism and playing the long game, like what are you doing? Right.
Yes.
So if you are 16, how many years of work do you have? 60, 70 years in front of you. So how are you going to, in this job, do the work, but what are the other things that you can learn through the
Yes.
frustration, through the what it feels like if you're not onboarded properly versus being onboarded properly, the relationships, because some people in those fast food environments, they have wonderful managers and colleagues and
Yes.
other people's, it's a dumpster fire. What can you learn from that into the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
role?
And if it's not for you, you can walk away, right? Like and find another job. But again, don't look at it as a waste of time. There's always something to take away from it. And whether that was a positive experience or a negative experience, it forms who we are and how we go about, life. So I always do encourage, no job is ever wasted as far as experience goes.
And I would also say to those managers at fast food restaurants that those people in front of you, you don't know the long-term impact for good or for ill that you're having on these individuals. I was just talking to somebody the other day who's an experienced professional, and I said, "Can you tell me about a good experience you had?" And she went back to her high school days of a manager at a Pizza Hut, and those when people see us and they bring about a climate in a fairly chaotic environment that is flourishing, that can stick with us decades later.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, I did the typical babysitting, and you always learn from interacting with the kids as well. So, and the parents. So,
So then where did you go on to college after
I
high school?
yes, I went to college. I went to Indiana University, and that was a great experience. I joined a sorority, and again, living with a group of women and interacting, and just life skills, right? You learn how to interact away from your family environment, and I think it's a great experience. Again, there's challenges that come up, but you're there and you're on your own 2 feet, and you hopefully have a support group of friends. And again, like a sorority fraternity is like a corporate structure, if you will. I held various offices there, so I was very engaged. So I would say that, one of the things that I like to do is whenever I take on a project, a job, I want to fully engage. And you do get more satisfaction out of that, opportunity, whether it is school, class, community, a job. So I went on and graduated, and then moved to Chicago, lived with, 4 girls in a 2 bedroom, and we were having a good life. we, Other than we were having a good life, right? With furniture from our parents and used furniture, and just enjoying, looking for a job, and, starting our careers.
What did you major in college?
I majored in liberal arts, and so, and a minor in business. And so a general studies type of program.
I can't say enough for liberal arts. Like we can find out what your experience is, but I
Yeah.
also love that you mentioned being a part of a sorority. When a lot
Yeah.
of times I think there's sort of a bit of an anti-narrative going on right now about higher education, and I think it's not understanding what it can be or what it could be. It's not just a trade school, right? We're not
Hmm.
just these little disembodied minds that are going to these different classes to get this information, but it is about learning these. It's a rite of passage in some ways. It's about learning these networking skills, working. So whether you're at a fraternity or sorority, joining organizations and getting involved, and you learn so much about applying what you're learning in the classroom.
Yes.
And
And
then,
about a
yeah,
community in large, right?
yeah.
Like different communities than what you came from, because it's usually, more diverse, and, people from across the country, let's say, and, just from different areas and perspectives. And so it's a learning experience. And if you look at life as that, I mean,
Yeah.
you really do, I believe you get more satisfaction out of it. So how do we become more engaged instead of disengaged, right?
Yeah.
And it really is a question that you have to ask yourself. And, that I believe starts with curiosity.
Mhm.
So, every day offers an opportunity to be curious, whether that's interacting with a person, an event, just walking down the street, looking at, new buildings going up, or it's people that you run across, even for a few seconds, it's an interaction, it's an engagement in life.
Yes, curiosity, it seems to be, is the name of the game. And I love that example, just looking around. So you see a new building go up, and you might be at a business meeting, and it might be the thing that bridges the gap with somebody else in this kind of small, talky way, but it's actually this human connection
Yes.
that now can go on to the next because, oh, you saw that too, or your thoughts about it. And then we've made this connection, and now
Yes.
we're moving on.
Absolutely. And it's, in this, tech world that we live in, digital world that we live in, how can we bring more humanness to it? And that's where I talk about the senses, right? It's sense to soul. So, my program starts with being grounded. And, what is being grounded? What does that mean? And it's really the first step to engaging with your environment, engaging with your community. So ground yourself through your senses. We all have sensory capabilities, and that's sight, smell, sound, taste, touch, and we're born with those. And even as individuals, what your taste buds enjoy, my taste buds may not enjoy.
Right.
What music you like to hear may be music that someone else doesn't like to hear, or, the smells. And so it's really diverse and engaging, and you get to know yourself a lot better. But what is your environment? Look up and out. So, let's hold our head up, and let's look around us and see where we are in that very moment. And so that can be moment by moment. You can assess your environment. What colors am I looking at? What smells am I engaging in? Am I hearing my colleagues speak? Is it a quiet room? Is it a noisier room? What are the smells? What are the textures around me? So again, it really gives you a sense of groundedness and a sense of awareness of your environment.
So when we think about a healthy work environment
Mhm.
and we think about where we are right now with AI and technology, so tell us why do we need this groundedness, this being aware of being embodied individuals with these sensory capabilities?
Well, I think that the more we know who we are as a person, an individual, the more that we can give,
Mm.
and the more that we can interact from a place of strength versus a place of weakness. So we're all individuals. We all need to respect that. And but you have to know yourself first, and let's come out of it in a positive light versus a negative. I think there's so much negativity around us, but yet there's so much positivity that we're not seeing because the negative is so much heavier. Scientifically the
Mhm.
molecule is heavier than the positive. So are we reacting in a positive way, or are we acting to a negative in a negative way? So how can we elevate that conversation, that interaction? So I think when you're grounded, again, feet on the ground, feel your feet, lift your head up, and let's start engaging in a positive light versus a negative, even if the negativity is coming at you. Pause for a minute and assess your surroundings, and also that makes you feel safe and secure, right? So, I'm in a familiar place, I'm surrounded by beauty being the positive, the love, and start engaging at that level. So if we can all elevate, our beings and our energetic beings, which that's what we are, is energy, and that's what I truly believe, and that's the next part of the program that I have is, let's elevate, and rise above. And it's almost the technique I've used for multiple years is rise above yourself and look down on the situation. So if you take yourself then out and look at the conflict or the activity that's happening, how can you address it from a non-personal or outside observer's way? Because when you get into conflict, your emotions take over.
Mhm.
So if you can remove some of that, emotional reaction, you can have a higher quality level of engagement. And we're all human. Again, emotions play into it, but how can we manage those emotions?
Yeah, emotional regulation is so important. And when we think about being a good colleague, a good professional, or just the
Yeah.
quality of our own life, we hear
Hmm.
a lot of talk about self-reflection. And I think largely the discussion of self-reflection is this reflexive ability to think about my own thoughts and my own beliefs, but it is very cerebral, right? We're just engaged in the mind. And of course, the mind, we can get stuck in the mind. And I think this is a very lovely and very human way. Well, what you're talking about is not only do, of course, we need that, but we also need to think about the fact that we have these bodies and that we have these sensations and to look out, not just within, and then
Yes.
to come out as well, like these different layers of what does it really mean to be self-aware and what are those things that we can do to help us be more aware. And it isn't just this cerebral exercise. I do think that's
No.
obviously a part of it, but it is a part. And when we just think about self-reflection and being a reflective person, and we just think about that, we're not really addressing who we are, the whole self, because we have a physical body, right?
Yeah.
And the physical obviously plays a large part into the stories we tell ourselves, how we think about things, and then therefore how we act based on our beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I take it, like you say, we're physical and we're mental, right? There's that part of us. But there's the third leg to the stool, if you will, and that is your soul. So we're mind, body, and soul. So we have programs around the body, physical exercise, workplace encourages that, with gym memberships or, sports activities. And that's very important to keep yourself physically healthy. And then mental, now there's mental health days, and there's more and more studies on mental health. And, you're not afraid now to say, yes, I'm going to a therapist, or I'm taking XYZ, drug to help, with my mental health. And that's normal, which is great. That needs to have happened. But what we're missing is the soul. And so let's get to know ourselves at the soul level. So what does that mean? And that's why I start again, sense to soul. So because it's like, oh, what is the soul? Is that religion? No, that's not religion. Soul is a part of you. Your religion may play a part in a resource to help you ground yourself in your soul, but there are many other resources available to help you get to know yourself at that soul level. And so let's make that part of the daily conversation. Just like, hey, how are you? How was your day? Oh, I worked out this morning. I lifted, 20-pound weights. I was only lifting 10 pounds. And now why can't we have that conversation around how's your soul health today? you know what are you doing for your soul health? Are you grounding yourself in your senses, in your environment? Are you taking account for where you are, whether that is your home environment, your work environment, your hobby environment? Who are you engaging with? So there's so many layers to that, and once you start focusing on that soul health, you become whole. As you said, it's about whole health. So let's start talking about it. And I believe that is going to make a big difference for the future of our universe, of our world.
So I'm a philosopher by trade, taught philosophy for over 20 years. So when anybody makes these distinctions, I'm very interested in what they mean. So I'm wondering, maybe along with some listeners, what is the distinction you're making between, like we talk about mental health,
Mm-hmm.
but are you making a distinction? It sounds like you are between mental health and soul health. What do you understand that distinction to be?
Yes. So your mental health is, part of your nervous system, let's say, your, brain activity. And again, I believe your emotions play into the mental health. So it is distinct from your physical health. Your physical health can react to that. And obviously, your mental health can affect your physical body, your organs. So, I say there's organ health, physical body. There's mental health, your nervous system body. And then there is soul health, which is your energetic body, really, and your deeper sense of purpose. So we're all born, and I talk about it. I was born an identical twin. So, I have an identical twin. What do people automatically do? They compare us physically.
Mm.
So, physically, I look exactly like someone. Does that mean we have the same purpose or underlying desire or even some sort of personality? No, it doesn't, because what makes us different? We may be similar, identical in our genetic makeup, in our physical looks, and even our, let's say, mental capabilities, our nervous system. But what makes us different is we both came in with a different soul. So I am an individual because of my soul.
Mm.
Otherwise, I would be an exact copy of someone else on this earth. So I think that I am qualified, if you will, to speak at a deeper level about the soul, because I truly know the distinction of coming in, looking, and being compared to an identical twin.
Mm.
And it's unique, right? It's very unique. And it's hard to explain being born an identical twin and being compared
Mm.
literally all your life. Like, oh, your voices sound alike, or oh, you're a fraction of an inch taller, or your nose is a little bit longer, or it's like, but we're more than our physical being. So I
Yeah.
guess I was born into knowing what my soul was capable of distinguishing.
Mm.
And let's rise above just the physical. And I do think it would be a better world if we all looked at our soul self. Despite race, color, gender. We're a human being, and there's three components to us. But at the core, our soul vibrates at a love-based level, right? So you either work out of fear or love. There's no other things in between. So if you look at yourself and say, am I approaching this out of fear, or am I approaching this out of a love positive, right? So again, you begin to elevate that being and get in touch with more of your soul's essence.
I think that's really lovely for a variety of reasons because let me go back to what you've illustrated with being identical twin, how important it is our surroundings, right? So
Yeah.
I think that many times that's lost on us. We think, oh, we just need we'll talk about work. We need a work environment. It doesn't
Mhm.
really matter what it looks like as long as there's a place for a person to sit and do their work. And I just think, what are you talking about? We are human persons.
Yeah.
We come in, with our senses, whatever they may be,
Mhm.
first, and we're taking in the temperature, how the smells, the feel of the chair,
Yeah.
and let alone what the color, the art or lack thereof, all of that stuff is, and it, of course, it hits us in different sorts of ways, right?
Yes.
But this being constantly compared, it's like this is just what we do. We're summing up, we're looking at things. And insofar as we don't pay attention to the physical look and feel and smell and sound of the environment in which we're in, we are not taking care of the human persons present.
Exactly.
Plato talks about in his famous work, The Republic, about how important the environment is, and he builds this society, and he's only going to let the best artisans in because he thinks that we're like these sponges, and whether or not we know it, the stuff around us is really informing what we think is happening. So if I show up to this interview with you and I've got my bathing suit on, do you think I'm taking this seriously, right?
Yeah.
Or you go into a place and the floor is trashed and nobody has picked up the trash. You think
Mhm.
this is a place in crisis, right?
Mhm.
Whether or not it is, it's we are taking in our environment
Yes, we are.
in a
And
place where they don't have universal design. What are we automatically seeing and assuming, even though maybe not consciously, it's oh, this place is only cater to certain kinds of people.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and it happens very quickly. We assess it very quickly. So let's get to know our senses again. We learned about them in, let's say, kindergarten, and right, because
Right?
automatic. We automatically sense our environment very quickly. And it either makes us, positive, sit up tall and start engaging at a positive level, or it makes us fear based or negative, right? So let's say we're in a cold room that's dark and damp. And how can we approach a situation positive when your body is trying to survive, basically?
Mhm.
So are we surviving or are we thriving? How do you put yourself into a thriving environment? And what does that entail? So I think we have to really take a close look. It's not materialistic.
No.
It truly is about the energy that is given off in a place of beauty.
Mhm.
And we're learning more and more about that. I'm working with neuroaesthetics that, again, if we create a place of beauty, how does that affect the nervous system?
Mhm.
And it affects it in a positive way. Like you have a bright, beautiful picture behind you. That uplifts the whole conversation because I'm focused on that. Your bright smile, it's calming, we're in a positive place of engagement. So it's important, and it's not materialistic. It truly is about the energy that it gives off, and we're all affected by it. Whether you want to say it's a neutral, it's not a neutral. It's
Mhm.
either a positive or a negative. You either come at it from a fear or from a love base. So again, the collective, the energy is rising to more of out of fear into love and thrive.
Mhm.
Um, so,
Yeah, so not to tarry on this too long, but I just think it people don't think enough about their particular workspace,
Yep.
about what it says to them consciously or unconsciously, and what other people see when they walk in. And I think employers need to think about it more. I was doing a workplace mediation with some people who were in turmoil, some great turmoil, and their organization had just moved. And before they had moved, there were some individual offices, and then it moved to one big space.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, these problems popped up. And the first thing I'm like, well, have you thought about this issue? And neither party wanted to say that had anything to do with it. The other person was the villain, right? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
this stuff was not happening when this person had an office and this person, right? They interacted very differently. But
Mm-hmm.
now they're just seeing each other all the time and their body language and we're not paying attention to those organizational factors, the physical factors that
Yep.
go into our human interaction,
Mm-hmm.
let
Mm-hmm.
alone just what it looks like, smells like,
Mm-hmm.
feels like.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's always these conflicts about the temperature, but we don't have conversations about it, and we don't
No.
have dialogue about that and the other things to have these healthy places for human persons.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say start small, let's bring in some color. Let's, bring in some small objects. That's why you see more and more plants, let's say, because green evokes a sense of calmness, a sense of nature. And so we all know that when we're out in nature, it does uplift us to a certain extent if it's not cold and snowy.
Right.
Um, you see plants more. You see different types of colors, calming colors. But what does your workspace look like? What is everything in that workspace positive? And I also say, when you look at your home, if you come home from a long day, your home should be structured to continue to uplift you or uplift you if you've had a stressful day. So let's say that you had, back to my early days of graduating college, we had borrowed furniture or, old used furniture. And what if you got your grandma's old brown couch that had some stains on it, but was perfectly fine, but brown brought you down, or you had a negative experience with grandma, or the couch wasn't comfortable. I say you cannot not afford to go and buy a new couch. And in today's marketplace, we can buy a couch at various cost levels, and it can be the color of your choice. It can be the material of your choice. And so it's important to put furniture, objects, paint color that evoke a positive love-based reaction from you, because that energy is around you all the time. So if you walk in and it's a dark room, dark furniture, how else are you supposed to feel? You could come from a positive, upbeat environment to a negative, and that's going to affect you, because then it takes a lot longer to pick yourself up from a negative situation, because the molecule is much heavier. And so I learned in sales 101, you put your top salesperson with your least producing salesperson, and what happens? The top salesperson goes down to that level of the lowest producer, because the negative is so heavy. And that's why the more positive we can put into our lives with, again, the aesthetics, the people that we surround ourselves with, again, the same thing. Don't stay too long in an environment that brings you down. Assess the situation, see if there's ways to, avoid conflict, or not avoid it, but, work with conflict. No situation is perfect. I'm not saying that, but yes, is the environment overall a positive environment that provides resources, for conflict that may happen?
I love thinking about this. If you ask, is my workplace, is my home place, is whatever a positive environment, it
Mm-hmm.
requires something of us to articulate, well, what is that? What do we
Mm-hmm.
think is positive? And then you could write a list. Okay, these are the things that are working, these are the things that are not. But it's
Absolutely.
it's this active engagement. If you don't know what it is, if you don't know what's not working, then how are you going to make any progress? And then we tend to put it out there. Other people need to, or it's just nebulous. But once we take ownership and say, okay, if I want a positive environment because I want a good life,
Yes.
what does that look like?
Yeah.
What might need to change? What are those, as you said, little steps, but it's in the right direction?
Absolutely. And if you don't start asking yourself that and taking responsibility, accountability, then you're disservicing yourself as well. And so, how if someone says, "Oh, I love the color blue," and you're like, "Okay, I like the color blue," but then think about it. Do you really like the color blue? When you go into a blue room, start looking and saying, "What color do I like? What color brings me joy?"
So
And
it's so funny that you're talking about that because as soon as you came online, the first thing I saw was the color of your sweater, which is beautiful, and then the sunlight behind you. So
yeah, yeah,
obviously, both of us very much respond to these visual cues and obviously your demeanor as well.
yeah.
So Pam, will you tell us about how you got to Soul Health? What has been your work trajectory to lead you to where you are now?
Yeah, so I had a 40-year career, very successful, very, again, overall, a very successful, enjoyable career. I feel blessed. I was in the asset management business, worked for Deutsche Bank, and worked with banks and independent representatives, wirehouses, selling mutual funds, annuities, and then transitioned to Nasdaq, which is, obviously a trading venue and took companies public. And so I, worked with in Silicon Valley with the Teslas and the Facebooks and, all the entrepreneurs. So it was fascinating, fast paced, competitive, all those wonderful or not so wonderful things. It depends how you look at it. I enjoyed that, but sometimes you forgot about yourself, right? Like in what you enjoy and the stresses that come along with the workplace, and how can you reset yourself? Obviously, because I've always engaged with the customer, with the client, so you have to be on. You can't say, well, I just had a bad meeting, and so now I'm not in a good mood, so I can't go to this meeting. No, you're going to the meeting and you dust yourself off and you're positive again. So I think I learned certain skills just on the way, right? To assess my being and am I living, from a positive place because, that's what the job required. And I'm basically a positive person. But again, life takes its toll,
Mhm.
So, but that's what I did for 40 years. And again, felt blessed to have had such a dynamic career, engaging. On every level every day. So I was fully engaged. And then you come home depleted and you're like, oh, you have to, how can I recharge myself? So that is, the typical, pampering yourself with massage or luxury resorts or, other things. But how can I know, what colors rejuvenate me, what smells are around me, do I have candles and diffusers, and those little things make a difference so that you can, and of course nutrition, but so that you can get back up and engage at your full self. You want to engage at your full self, not your depleted self. So how can I do that? That's the question you have to keep asking yourself. So then that transition to, I've always been, interested in digging into it deeper. Back in the 80s, I was always reading books about, with Deepak Chopra, if you will, getting to know yourself at a different level. And so I think that led to my, there's something missing in the workplace. And I think it's about the soul. And let's get comfortable talking about it. And even the 5 years that I've been doing this, you know, uh, it's become easier to talk about the soul because at first people do tie it automatically to religion.
Mhm.
And it'd be like, let's say you went to the doctor and they said, you have a bad heart. We're going to have to do surgery. Would you leave your heart with the doctor? No, it's a part of your being. So why would you leave your soul with your religious organization? You wouldn't. That's part of you. So let's start taking back ownership, I guess, of your soul. And what does that entail?
Hmm.
And so I'm trying to make it a visible part of yourself because people it's easier to understand the physical body because you can see it.
Mhm.
It's harder, like mental health, right? That took a while to grasp, but now we all talk about it. We can quasi visualize that. Well, let's start talking about the soul and visualizing what that looks like to you.
Hmm. Yeah, I must admit that I had some resistance. And I probably still have some residual resistance of thinking about the soul in a different way because it is typically tied to
Yes.
religion and religious traditions. But I hear what you're saying because there are many people who are non-religious. So does that mean they don't have a soul, or like,
No.
what does this mean about them? Of course, religious individuals would say, well, of course they have a soul. Maybe they don't recognize it.
Yeah.
But if you don't have an organized religion, then how do you understand who you are? And um,
Yeah. And I'm saying too that to understand your soul, there's other resources other than your religious, just like it's not like we go to the doctor every day and sit there and talk to him every day, right?
mhm,
So your religious is just part of your toolkit, if you will,
mhm,
right? So on a day-to-day basis, what else are you doing for your soul? And that's why I start with the senses, so you can start to visualize your own unique person, right? Like your, I want to say fingerprint, but I believe my fingerprints are exactly the same as my sister's. So that doesn't make sense either. But, your own unique essence, right? What is your own unique essence?
mhm.
And yes, are there common threads that run throughout? Maybe the majority of people like the color blue. Yeah, okay, that's fine. But there's some uniqueness. So maybe it is about finding your uniqueness and, thriving within that uniqueness because we're all here to contribute something, at a certain level. And so, again, being an identical twin, I recognize that at a deep level.
Mhm. This thinking about the individuation, I think you're absolutely right that we need to really recognize the individualness of of the person, right? Because so many times we other people and put them in groups. They're all like this.
Yes,
And when I stand outside of somebody else's pain or conflict, I say, oh, well, this is the easy thing to do, or oh, this is what you need to do. It doesn't recognize what it means to be that person in that situation, given their past, given what they see, given these relationships, the messiness of the individual, and yet holding that with humanity, right? We're all
yes.
humans. We have all of this in common, and yet we still stand as individual to individual. So this common language that we can share while still embracing that we all are individual. And I think it's lovely to so we just had a Super Bowl here in the States. And every time there's a Super Bowl, there's a halftime show. There's people who love it, people who hate it. And the people who love it say, why don't you get it? You're out of touch. And the people who hate it say, there's nothing there. And I think it's such an odd reaction because not every piece of art is for every person. Not every scent, not everybody loves cilantro, right? Like we know all of these
Absolutely.
things. And the more we can embrace this real live and let live, like what does it really mean to have basic societal standards? Absolutely. And civility standards at work? Absolutely. And yet, not only just allow for diversity, but really, as you started with, being curious about it and wanting it and embracing the other as a good, that there are a variety of legitimate ways to be about in the world.
Well, and just because you don't like something doesn't mean and I like something doesn't mean we're on opposite ends. We can still coexist, right? So that's why, again, let's look at someone deeper than, okay, I'm a woman, I'm this age group, I'm this, ethnic group. Let's look at the person at a different level. Like,
Mhm.
what if you saw that person at its soul essence? And that's what I see is people have always said you see a person at their soul versus their physical or their even their mental, if you will. So, let's all train ourselves to not immediately judge, oh, she's a woman versus a man, so she can only do this and the man can only do that, right?
Mhm.
So we've come a long way. Let's just even look at the family dynamic where the man wasn't part of the caretaking of the children back in the day, but now they're very much engaged in the caretaking of the children. They do have that skill set. So, we've come a long way in certain areas, but we still need to work on that. And again, if you look at, a person from a higher above, you'll see them differently and you'll approach it differently.
I
You
agree.
automatically say, oh, we have nothing in common. They come from this culture. I come from this culture. Why don't we approach it out of curiosity? Oh, you're a different religion. Oh, wow. Tell me about it. You know, I'll tell you about mine. You tell me about yours. And there's commonalities, as we all know. So, isn't that fascinating? Again, doesn't mean that we have to agree or disagree, but let's look at it from a curiosity instead of, oh, well, I'm this and you're that. And again, that's the old paradigm. We're moving into a new paradigm, a new world. So, do you have the skill set to move into that new world and how it's going to be looked at? And it's about time we move from survival mode to thrive mode.
Mm.
Let's all start thriving instead of surviving. Because as far as I know, I don't have to tonight think about where I'm going to eat, right? I can go to the grocery store. I can cook my meal. I can go to a restaurant. I mean, in most areas, you have the opportunities to go get food that you don't have to go out into the forest or the jungle and see if you can find that, food source, and maybe it won't be there. We know for the most part we have a food source. So that changes us from survival to thrive. But our brain, I know it takes a while for the brain to catch up to those, you know, oh my God, don't, I'm in survival mode. But again, it just takes practice and how you look at things.
Can you tell us about a time that you experienced conflict, maybe earlier on in your career, and how you dealt with it, and maybe given what you know now, what you're interested in now, how maybe you would approach it differently if you
Yeah,
would?
I think that I did get more defensive in situations, right? So whether it was, a boss, or a colleague that, again, mistakes were made or didn't communicate correctly, you're like, oh, how could you say that? How could you do that? And that creates tension, right? And I think I would approach it differently now. But yes, absolutely, we all go through that and don't approach it in probably the best manner. But if you can learn from that, and move on and not repeat it again and again, because repeating something and getting the same result, you must recognize then, I better change the way I approach something. And I think I learned very early on from a boss, and he was a wise person. And I let's say I'd had conflict or disagreement with one of the senior managers, and I wasn't a senior manager, I was a junior level manager. And, we resolved the conflict and moved on. And he told my boss about it, that I had disagreed or didn't think it was the right move. So my boss came to me and said, hey, I heard you had this disagreement with this senior level person. Why didn't you tell me about it? I'm like, well, I thought it was resolved and it didn't blow up to a huge event. And he said, listen, I can't defend you if I don't know about the situation. So it obviously still bothered the senior manager that you had disagreed with something. So next time, just tell me. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And he goes, just don't let it happen again. Once you make a mistake, learn from it and move on. So he was cool about it, right? Like he was like, I'm not going to, keep beating you up over it. I'm just telling you, next time you encounter a situation like this, let's discuss it and then move on. So I learned, again, this was very early in my career. Let's just, whether you have a positive interaction, negative interaction, there's people in your circle that may need to know.
Mm. That's such a wonderful lesson to learn because I think we all learn those kinds of lessons. And
Yeah.
when you're younger, a lot of times, or you just think, I don't want to burden my boss with this. I took care of it,
Yeah.
and why do they need to know? And really,
Yep.
it is out of desire to not necessarily protect the self, but I don't want to look like I need to run and tell this person everything.
Yes, exactly.
But as you move along, and this example is a perfect illustration. Well, actually, those are things your boss needs to know for a variety of reasons,
Yes.
and learning, and as you go to the next place, starting to have those conversations. What do you want to know about?
Yeah.
There could be some bosses out there that don't want to know that, and then you learn, but having that experience and him not getting bent out of shape or writing you up or, as
Yep.
some managers, some bosses do,
Yes.
um, we learn, we're going to make mistakes. We're humans. It's just a part of it. And we
Yes.
learn from those mistakes. Being that kind of manager that knows how to address it because he brought it to your attention, tell
Yep.
you what to do differently, but then also you being receptive to that,
Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
professionalism goes both ways.
Yes. And it was a 5-minute conversation,
Mm.
right? We don't need to belabor it.
Right.
We need to address it,
Mhm.
and let's move on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, let's move on, So because of the way he addressed it, you're correct. I didn't burden myself with, oh my God, I did a horrible thing. And am I going to get fired tomorrow? And, he reassured me, a mistake happened. Don't let it happen again. Let's just move on.
Mm.
Great. Because I didn't know their relationship, right? Maybe
Right.
they're having a conflict relationship. And maybe the other manager was looking at ways to, pick at my manager, right? So I didn't know that dynamic, and that could have been.
Mhm.
So it was a great learning experience.
I also love that you point out that was 5 minutes. A lot of times people think these conversations, these difficult conversations, when there's feedback to be had, it's going to be a come to Jesus. It's like an hour. They're going to be crying. I would say absolutely not. If you are conflict averse, and you need to share feedback that is possibly negative, do all those preparations so that you can make it short and sweet. You
Yes,
just tell the person what needs to happen. And if you're done with it, that you're done with it and you move on and then you demonstrate it and you get very clear. So you got this clear message and then that helped you learn and not have to ruminate about it and move on.
yes. And you have to address it early on. Like he
Hmm.
didn't say, oh, by the way, 3 weeks earlier, I had this talk and, I've been meaning to tell you. And you're like, oh my God, so that's why you've been avoiding me. Or,
Right. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, people hear about those things 9 months later at their yearly
yeah,
evaluation or something like that. Yeah.
exactly. And if you hear about it like 9 months later, how could you improve it or change it? And then you don't, it's just like a child too, right? It's in the moment, right? Okay. Oh yeah, I remember that interaction. Okay, now I understand what I did and what I need to do to improve on that interaction. If it's 9 months later, you may have, like, what did I say or do?
So, Pam, I'm very interested in how we have healthy professional work environments, right? And so this layer of professionalism, where of course some people use this language, this is a family. Work is not a family. And then some people go to the other direction of I do my job, I get out, I talk to nobody, right?
Mhm.
So how do you see talk about soul health? Um, I heard you kind of talking about it before, but maybe if you could flesh it out a little bit more. How do we maybe reduce the stigma, but make it work appropriate where people don't feel like they're getting too much information or they're being pried at?
Mhm.
Do you
Mhm.
understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah. I think it's again, starting with an environment that we want the full human, right? Like we should bring our full whole humanness to every situation. Now, does that mean, telling every intimate detail of our life? No. And I think that's what we need to understand is like just because, you say you bring your full humanness does not mean you overshare in certain situations. So, but who are you at the essence? And that carries you throughout your life. So if the employer wants to have a committed, fully engaged individual, just like you said, there's many that just come in and leave, come in and leave. They're not getting a fully engaged individual. And that individual's life can't be satisfied, because work takes up a good portion of that. So let's not ignore that. Like, oh, only 50% of my life is going to be fully engaged, and the other 50%, I'm just going to go and do the work and come out. That's not enjoyable. So, how can we bring joy? And, again, not saying that it's not hard. I mean, your personal life is hard, your work life is hard, everything has its challenges, right? But it doesn't mean there can't be full engagement. And how are you fully engaged physically, mentally, and at the soul? Is it serving my higher purpose? Am I living out of, again, a positive love base versus fear base? How am I engaging? Am I engaging at an ego level or at a soul level? It's as simple as that. So when I interact with you, how am I interacting? So we interact in daily life. I mean, that could go from ordering your Starbucks coffee to, workplace to your, partner, right? So how am I engaging? And you should be engaging at the same level out of a higher level of positivity. So how can I do that? And that's why I think the workplace has got to start to address that, is because do you get the full human? And again, it does not mean they come and tell you every intimate detail of their whole life, right? But your whole humanness engaged with the workplace. Do our values align? Do you agree with the purpose of our company? Do you like the environment that we have set up for you? And again, each individual is different. So each individual may say, yeah, I love this value. The next person would say, I'm here for this value. Again, I'm here for this purpose. Oh, you're here for that purpose. That's great. You know, I want that individual to come and fully present and do their set position, job, and be productive, although I don't like that word productive because it can get misused, but engagement at a higher level. So how can I get more satisfied? Because workers are not satisfied, right? I mean, the studies show workers are not satisfied. And why? Why aren't they satisfied? And I think that the soul part is missing. How are they engaging? And their physical body may be healthy, their mental body may be healthy, but what's their soul body doing?
So my last question for you today is, I agree that our environment and the people around us really have everything to do with what we're going to be doing.
Yep,
And so when we're around other people who are engaged and they're being professional and they
yep,
are positive, and of course we're
yep.
not talking about toxic positivity. This is absolutely not what we're talking about. Sometimes people hear positive and they think that. No,
No,
as you mentioned, life is hard. It's going to be hard. It's going to be stressful.
yep,
Yeah, okay, fine. But how do we still be for others, be human? Okay,
yep.
so my question is, you're showing up and you are working on this and you're working towards this new future of flourishing, but you have colleagues or you're within an organization that is not there. And you happen to, a lot of people live in this reality where, for whatever reason, at this time, they don't feel like, and maybe the reality is they can't move jobs, can't change jobs.
Hmm.
What advice would you have for that person?
I would say work on yourself. I mean, give more opportunity to work on yourself and assess your environment and find, the positive. So let's say that goes back to the basics, right? Am I surrounded by, what senses am I surrounded with? And can I elevate my surrounding by bringing in, the scent of lavender, let's say, or the beauty of a piece of art that I enjoy, so that I can stay focused on that and what I can do to help elevate my own little personal the place in this environment. And yeah, if it's too chaotic, I don't think you should stay too long and start to search out, a new opportunity with a more positive environment. Because studies show, again, the negative then continues to bring you down, and then it's harder to pick yourself back up and then try to get, let's say, a new opportunity. So I would say if you can focus on what you can bring to your environment and stay away from the conflict, if you will. And if people try to engage you at a negative level, kindly walk away from that situation.
I love that response because I happen to absolutely agree with you. And
Yeah.
it's simple, it's elegant, and it's true. When we tell ourselves there is no other place to go, that's usually not the case. But there are other things going on that were telling us that story. But if we stop and take stock and start to work on ourselves, then we will start to see or attract other opportunities. We will
Yeah.
start to one person can transform an organization, right? Insofar as we stop engaging in that gossip or we stop engaging in these negative practices. And instead we say something positive when
Yes.
somebody says something negative. It's
Yes.
amazing how the light, I mean, how that's transformative, just like the negative can bring you down. You can choose to do something else.
Yes, absolutely. And it can be small, and then you continue on that trajectory, and you realize all of a sudden you look around and you're surrounded by, a bouquet of flowers, right?
Yeah.
That you can't help but smile when you see them.
Yeah.
So, bring your own bouquet,
One flower at a time.
flower at a time.
I love that. Well, Pam, thank you so much for being on Conflict Manage. It's been a joy to talk with you today.
Well, thank you so much as well. I appreciate it.
And if people want to find you, where would they go?
They can go to thequantumsense.com and look at my website, and please reach out. I'd enjoy a conversation, and look forward to bringing more soul to your life.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Pam. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Pam, thank you so much for being on Conflict Managed and the work that you're doing to make workplaces and elsewhere more human-centric, that we can be whole people no matter where we are. Conflict Managed is produced by third-party workplace conflict restoration services and hosted by me, Mary Brown. You can find us online at 3pconflictrestoration.com. Come back. We have new episodes every Tuesday. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like us and follow us on whatever platform you are listening or watching this on. And if you are watching this, or if you want to watch it, go to YouTube at 3P Conflict Restoration. Our music is courtesy of Dove Pilot. And remember, conflict is normal and expected. Let's deal with it. Until next time, take care.